Mom, check my shoes. I can't compete in the nationals I've been training so hard for. My heart sank as I heard these desperate words. Just 15 minutes after watching my daughter Zoe leave for the national track meet, she unexpectedly rushed back home, tears streaming down her face. I had just received an urgent call from her coach telling me there was an emergency. My nurse's instincts kicked in immediately, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. About 5 minutes after ending the call with her coach, just as he had warned, Zoe burst through our front door. The cause of Zoe's distress became clear when I examined her track bag. When I looked inside, I discovered her specialized custom running shoes, the ones Ethan had carefully selected with her, were deliberately damaged. The spikes were bent, and the supportive structure was compromised. I soon learned that my mother-in-law Vivian had appeared at the practice field and interfered. I should mention that my relationship with Vivian has always been strained, and she's never hidden her dislike for Zoe, so there was no legitimate reason for her to show up at the field that morning. I immediately called Vivian, my voice trembling with barely contained fury as I demanded an explanation. Vivian coldly replied that it wasn't fair for only Zoe, one of her 2 granddaughters, to participate in a national competition. She claimed it would be too painful for Riley, who couldn't compete, to watch her cousin succeed. Vivian defended her actions as equalizing opportunities between the girls, insisted she had done nothing wrong, and abruptly terminated the call. My anger burned like a physical pain, and I immediately reported the incident to a certain individual. As a consequence, Vivian's calculated cruelty triggered the righteous indignation of that person, ultimately leading to her own undoing. I'm Olivia Henderson, a 32-year-old pediatric nurse at Central Memorial Children's Hospital. I share my life with my husband Ethan, an IT engineer who's 34, and together we have our amazing daughter Zoe. Zoe, who just started 6th grade this year, has been training for the national track competition with a passion that makes my heart swell with pride. Since 1st grade, Zoe has excelled in track and field, particularly in long-distance running and hurdles, often demonstrating techniques to her classmates during PE. Zoe's victory at the district championships made the local paper, turning her into something of a neighborhood celebrity. Every spring, there's a track and field day where each student showcases their athletic abilities in a personal event. When Zoe performs, students crowd around to watch her fly over hurdles with perfect form. Despite the attention, Zoe remains humble, never letting success go to her head. She patiently helps classmates with running form and training advice, staying after practice without complaint. I couldn't ask for a more considerate daughter. Ethan and I married for love, but from day one, we've faced struggles not from our relationship, but from Vivian, my mother-in-law. She believes I've stolen her precious son, and has made it her mission to punish me. Initially, Vivian insisted we live with her as a condition for blessing our marriage. Ethan had moved out during college, valuing independence, and I had similar experiences. We wanted our own space, not an extension of either parent's household. We agreed that if either set of parents needed support later, we would reassess. We gently explained that immediate cohabitation wasn't possible for us. We could have firmly refused, but I feared damaging our relationship beyond repair. That's when Walter, my father-in-law, stepped in, saying it would be unreasonable to expect newlyweds to sacrifice their privacy so soon. He suggested giving us space to establish our marriage. His words felt like a lifeboat. Ethan navigated his mother's disappointment, and the issue was reluctantly shelved. After our wedding, Vivian relentlessly revived the cohabitation discussion at every family dinner. Typically, in-laws who want shared living make some effort to be agreeable, but Vivian broke that rule with apparent delight. Working full-time with a child at home must be nice, she'd say with a thin smile. When I was your age, I was teaching and managing a household without complaint. I'm surprised Ethan tolerates such disorder. She timed her visits when Ethan was at conferences, inspecting our home and leaving cutting remarks in her wake. When Ethan traveled overnight, she would stay over, declaring it unsafe to drive back after dark, forcing me to endure hours of insults. The criticism gradually eroded my confidence until I developed anxiety despite my professional competence. When Ethan connected my symptoms to his mother's behavior, he confronted her, promising we would never share a roof with her. With Ethan and Walter creating a buffer, I slowly began to reclaim my security. When I became pregnant, I feared Vivian's interference, but surprisingly, she showed no interest. Her attention was absorbed by Tessa, my sister-in-law, who announced her own pregnancy shortly after mine. She ignored my pregnancy while lavishing expensive baby items on Tessa. The following years were peaceful as our daughter grew strong and fair-minded. Vivian remained convinced I had manipulated Ethan against his real family. As Zoe grew to resemble me, Vivian's coldness toward her became impossible to ignore. She doted on Riley, Tessa's daughter, while deliberately overlooking Zoe. Walter would secretly give gifts to Zoe, but if caught, Vivian would snatch them away. I won't waste money on the child of the woman who stole my son. When confronted, she would accuse us of ganging up on a lonely older woman. Zoe eventually understood her grandmother's dislike, yet never developed bitterness, meeting coldness with kindness that humbles me. I feel profound gratitude when I think about the compassionate person she's becoming despite these challenges. Just before Zoe started first grade, Tessa's business consulting venture collapsed, and her marriage to Grant fell apart. The divorce finalized, Tessa moved back to her parents' home with my niece Riley. Riley ended up in the same school district and grade as Zoe, though in different classrooms. Despite this separation, Riley often sought out Zoe during breaks and lunch periods. She constantly borrowed pencils, erasers, and other basic supplies that every student was expected to have. I noticed something was off when Zoe's carefully organized supplies began disappearing at an alarming rate. My first worry was bullying, but the truth was simpler and somehow more troubling. When two children share resources, everything depletes twice as fast. While relieved it wasn't bullying, a persistent uneasiness gnawed at me. I wondered if this was Tessa's subtle way of transferring her financial burden onto us. Vivian's dislike for me and Zoe intensified after Tessa moved back home, her comments becoming more frequent and biting. How does someone with your limited talents keep my brother interested? He's bound to find someone better. Tessa portrayed herself as a savvy businesswoman despite her failed ventures, posting carefully curated photos while reality told a different story. She made pointed remarks about how my career would inevitably drive Ethan away. I tried brushing off these comments, telling myself they stemmed from jealousy. But the thought of their hostility extending toward my daughter made my stomach twist with anxiety. I convinced myself I was overthinking things, that adults wouldn't deliberately hurt a child. This willful blindness would prove costly in ways I couldn't have imagined. Time passed, and before I knew it, Zoe was in 6th grade, her confidence growing with each track meet. The annual regional track championships approached in spring, a pivotal event for young athletes. Zoe had been training relentlessly, carefully tracking her running times in her journal. As the competition approached, our dinner conversations revolved around training strategies and tactics. Ethan shared stories of his own track experiences, and I contributed insights from treating young athletes. When the official competition packet arrived, Zoe and I created a detailed preparation schedule. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, but I felt an undercurrent of concern. There had been troubling incidents at school involving stolen gym clothes and damaged sports equipment. Zoe had confided, "Why are some kids so petty about others' success?" By 6th grade, athletic differences become more pronounced, with some students developing natural advantages. Zoe, with her dedicated training regimen, had started to stand out among her peers. The competition guidelines stressed the importance of proper footwear and recommended specialized track shoes. They also suggested bringing backup equipment in case of damage or unexpected issues. These materials circulated among students, drawing attention to participants. Some jealous classmates had begun making snide comments about tryhards to those excelling in sports. I had already discussed competitive environments with Zoe, drawing on my experiences in pediatric sports medicine. Her coach had emphasized sportsmanship and mutual respect as competition intensified. These conversations included handling both success and disappointment with grace, and never mocking someone's sincere efforts. Zoe, with her unwavering sense of fairness, stood up for a teammate when someone stole her custom track spikes before a practice meet. One particular boy, whose mother headed the school's athletics booster club, complained about that Henderson girl thinking she runs the school. This sparked drama when several parents of the boy's friends demanded the principal discipline Zoe for, creating tension on the track team. Fortunately, the coach had already documented previous instances of equipment tampering targeting successful female athletes. The parents of the affected girls threatened to escalate to the district athletic director if the harassment continued, forcing the school to take a harder line with the troublemakers. This stand elevated Zoe's status among her teammates, who now saw her as someone who wouldn't back down from injustice. but the playground operates by its own rules, and kids can be surprisingly strategic in their retaliation when adults aren't watching. My nursing instincts kicked into overdrive as I worried about potential backlash from the group Zoe had confronted. Although her coach and teachers promised extra vigilance, the knot of concern in my stomach remained tight and persistent. Strangely, Zoe herself seemed unfazed, shrugging off my concerns and focusing instead on her upcoming competition. We planned our shopping for Zoe's competition gear around her training schedule. We couldn't shop on days she had afternoon track practice or strength training. During one of these shopping trips to a specialty running store, I literally bumped into Tessa examining expensive running shoes. I was mentally preparing for this awkward encounter when Vivian emerged from another aisle, her eyes narrowing when she spotted us. They were apparently shopping together, with Tessa stepping out to the display window while Vivian interrogated a sales associate about discounts. "Perfect timing," Tessa said with a brittle smile. "I hear Zoe's the star of the track team. I don't believe in playing favorites with our children. Since your daughter has access to professional training, Riley should get the same opportunity. Since I'm a single mom rebuilding my consulting business, naturally you'll help with the registration fees." She casually added that I should handle transportation to and from practices as well. "Why would that be my responsibility?" I asked firmly, feeling my face flush with heat. Vivian immediately jumped in, accusing Zoe of flaunting her achievements. "Your daughter must have been showing off to Riley, making her feel inadequate. Don't look down on us just because we're going through a transition phase. Implying we can't provide quality activities because we lack a father figure is incredibly insensitive to modern family structures." I typically avoided confrontations with Vivian and Tessa whenever possible. Their demand that I fund Riley's training and provide transportation as compensation for some imagined slight was beyond reasonable. Zoe started to defend herself, but Vivian cut her off sharply. "Young people should not interrupt adult conversations." I felt Zoe's hand tighten around mine, her knuckles white with restrained emotion. Seeing my daughter forced to swallow this injustice ignited something fierce inside me. "We'll discuss this with Ethan tonight and let you know our decision," I said, my nurse's voice calm but firm. "I know my daughter. She wouldn't make anyone feel less than." I offered to speak directly with Riley to understand the situation from her perspective. At the mention of involving Ethan and talking to Riley, panic flashed across their faces. Taking advantage of their momentary uncertainty, we made our exit. Once safely in our car, I pulled Zoe into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry you had to experience that," I whispered against her hair. She insisted it wasn't my fault, but in my heart, I recognized that my complicated relationship with Vivian cast shadows over my daughter, despite none of this being her doing. That evening, I recounted the incident to Ethan, whose expression darkened with each detail. He immediately called Walter, and we discovered that an uncomfortable conversation was already underway at the Montgomery house, with Riley caught in the middle. I knew from experience that Vivian and Tessa wouldn't easily abandon their demands. Despite our concerns, the morning of the regional track championships finally arrived, bringing with it a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Even though we had methodically packed her gear the night before, I still found myself asking Zoe if she had everything as she laced up her running shoes. With a confident grin, Zoe reassured me, "It's all good, Mom. We've checked everything like 3 times already." Then she bounded out the door with the effortless energy of a born athlete. It's barely a 5-minute jog to the school track where the team was meeting. The athletes would travel by chartered bus to the competition venue, with a scheduled stop for stretching. While reviewing patient charts for my upcoming shift, I kept checking the time, imagining Zoe warming up with her teammates. The team bus would be departing soon, right on schedule. My mind couldn't help playing through worst-case scenarios. I was thinking about my own track meets at her age, how my mom must have worried while I was completely absorbed in pre-race jitters and team camaraderie. The shrill ring of my phone cut through my thoughts at an unexpected hour. Just 15 minutes after Zoe had left, her coach's name flashed on my screen. When he explained there was a situation requiring immediate attention, my heart pounded against my ribs, my mind racing to the possibility of injury. As I listened to his measured tone, the actual situation gradually became clear. Zoe needed to return home due to an equipment issue. If I could quickly provide a solution for her damaged shoes and drive her directly to the venue, she could still make her events. After thanking the coach for his quick thinking and ending the call, I immediately located Zoe's backup running shoes. While gathering these supplies, I heard the front door slam and looked up to see Zoe standing there, tears streaming down her flushed face. I'd been briefed by the coach, but seeing my daughter's devastation hit me with unexpected force. Just 15 minutes earlier, she had practically floated out the door, confidence radiating from her. Now that confidence had crumbled, replaced by frustrated tears and trembling hands. When I asked what happened, she wordlessly thrust her track bag toward me. Opening it, I discovered her specialized running shoes with the spikes deliberately bent and the supporting arch damaged. The shoes, which Ethan had carefully researched and chosen specifically for her stride pattern, were clearly sabotaged. Thankfully, the damage was limited to the shoes, sparing her other competition gear. Between sobs, Zoe explained that Vivian had appeared at the practice field unexpectedly and interfered with her equipment. Knowing her grandmother's indifference toward her, Zoe had assumed Vivian was there to support Riley, who was observing the team's departure. Absorbed in pre-meet strategy discussions with her relay teammates, she hadn't noticed Vivian lurking near the equipment area. It was her teammate Madison who spotted the interference and called out, "Zoe, there's some old lady messing with your stuff by the bench." By the time Zoe reached her bag, the damage was already done, and when she examined her shoes, she discovered the deliberate sabotage. Zoe had confronted Vivian in disbelief, but her grandmother merely shrugged it off as accidentally stepping on them, before quickly leaving. I pulled Zoe into a tight hug, promising to address this with Vivian later, and focused on getting her back into competition mindset. Working quickly, I retrieved her backup shoes, which lacked the specialized spikes but would still allow her to compete. Zoe's resilience emerged through her tears as she helped me gather replacement gear, her competitive spirit gradually returning. We rushed to the car and headed directly to the competition venue, pushing the speed limit the entire way. We arrived before most of the competitors, thanks to traffic delaying the team bus. The meet director accommodated our unusual arrival, which we deeply appreciated. Zoe joined her teammates in the warm-up area, receiving encouraging high fives, and waved to me repeatedly as I reluctantly left the track. After watching her begin her stretching routine with determined focus, I drove home with a storm brewing inside me. Before my shift started, I called Vivian, intent on confrontation. I knew emotional outbursts would only give her satisfaction, so I practiced the calming techniques I use during hospital emergencies. Taking several measured breaths, I picked up the phone and dialed. Vivian answered with artificial pleasantness, as if expecting my call. With clinical precision, I asked her to explain her actions regarding Zoe's track shoes. She's one of my 2 granddaughters, and it seemed profoundly unfair for only Zoe to participate in elite competition. I thought you'd ignore any reasonable discussion. So I took action to level the playing field. Isn't your lack of consideration for Riley the real issue here? Shouldn't you reflect on that inequity? What kind of twisted logic was this woman employing? That thought blazed through my mind, but years of dealing with difficult situations in pediatric emergency care had taught me restraint. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't escalate the situation, Vivian abruptly ended the call, claiming she had an important appointment. I had no idea Riley couldn't participate in the track meet. I deliberately limited my interactions with Vivian and Tessa to protect my sanity. How was I supposed to know about their situation? Zoe hadn't mentioned anything about her cousin not participating. There had been no talk of injury or illness, and despite my strained relationship with Tessa, if Riley had been hurt, Ethan would certainly have heard about it. Ethan always shares important family information with me, even when it involves difficult relatives. As my anger simmered dangerously close to boiling over, my phone lit up with Riley's number. She admitted feeling intense jealousy watching Zoe prepare for the regional championships with such enthusiasm. Her mother had told her she couldn't compete because they hadn't paid the registration fees. Vivian, upon learning this, had declared that if Riley couldn't participate, it was only fair that Zoe should experience similar disappointment. She had announced this plan the previous night, but Riley never imagined her grandmother would actually sabotage Zoe's chance to compete. Riley's voice trembled with remorse as she apologized. She revealed she'd been completely unaware of the unpaid fees until recently. Tessa had repeatedly assured her that everything was taken care of and not to worry about registration, so Riley had trusted her mother's word. But as competition day approached, the painful truth emerged that no payment had ever been submitted. My heart ached thinking of how cruelly Tessa had manipulated her own daughter. There were several students in Zoe's school who couldn't participate in sports for various legitimate reasons. Growing up, I'd known children who missed activities due to health issues or family circumstances. I'd specifically taught Zoe never to question why someone wasn't participating in an event. I suspected Riley's coach, trying to be sensitive to what appeared to be financial constraints, hadn't pressed too hard about the unpaid fees. Had they pursued it more aggressively, Riley would have asked questions, and Walter, living in the same house, would inevitably have discovered the deception. I could no longer remain silent about Tessa's willingness to disappoint her child so needlessly. My policy of avoidance had reached its limit. This deliberate cruelty demanded a response. I resolved to address this situation not only for Riley's sake, but also to confront the toxic pattern once and for all. I assured Riley this situation wasn't her responsibility but an issue created entirely by adults. That evening, when Ethan returned from work, I recounted everything that had transpired. He immediately called Walter, sharing the disturbing details we'd uncovered. Walter, still actively teaching at 62, expressed profound regret for missing the signs and apologized deeply. The revelation that registration fees had gone unpaid despite available funds left him visibly shaken. Ethan was livid that Vivian had deliberately targeted our daughter at a crucial competition. He blamed himself, wondering if his presence that morning might have deterred Vivian's sabotage. It seemed inconceivable that Vivian, who had never shown interest in school sports, would suddenly appear at a team departure. The situation remained painfully unresolved. But Walter, his academic patience exhausted, was preparing a response of his own. After our conversation, Walter immediately called an emergency family meeting, confronting Vivian and Tessa with undeniable evidence. This intense discussion apparently continued into the night, voices rising and falling like monitor alarms during a hospital emergency. My phone jolted me awake before sunrise, and Tessa's angry voice cutting through my exhaustion. "How does it feel being woken up because you ran to Walter? Mom and I endured hours of his lecturing. I'm too exhausted to function, so you need to come make breakfast. It's only fair since you created this situation with your tattling. This is why you'll never be a real Montgomery." I had answered automatically, barely conscious during her tirade, eventually drifting back to sleep with the phone still in hand. Misinterpreting my groggy mumbles as agreement, Vivian expected me to cook breakfast, leaving Walter without anything prepared. His patience exhausted, Walter questioned whether his intervention had made any impact, then made his own breakfast. Vivian hastily prepared scrambled eggs that turned out inedibly salty, prompting Walter to observe that a partner who sabotages relationships and can't perform basic cooking despite her constant criticism might not be worth staying married to. Ethan believes this confrontation might finally bring some peace to our family. I want to believe that's possible. Surprisingly, as Ethan predicted, the undermining calls from both Vivian and Tessa ceased entirely, giving us welcome calm while Zoe competed in her championship events. Zoe returned from the competition radiant with accomplishment, her words tumbling out faster than her thoughts during dinner. I gently reminded her either compete in eating or storytelling, honey, not both. She animated each race with enthusiastic gestures until she finally collapsed into bed. Despite our strict budget, she had thoughtfully purchased small gifts for each of us. Her compassion extended even to Riley, who couldn't participate. Zoe had noticed her cousin's absence and asked her coach why Riley wasn't competing. The coach, protecting Riley's dignity, simply mentioned she was unable to attend this meet. Touched by this, Zoe bought matching winners' bracelets in different colors. I assured her Riley would love the gift and would see her at school soon. Sometimes, shielding someone from unnecessary pain is its own form of kindness. A few days later, Walter called us for a serious conversation. The discovery of Riley's unpaid competition fees prompted him to contact Grant, Tessa's ex-husband. Walter had never known the true reason for their divorce, having kept his distance from what he considered private matters. Witnessing Riley's apparent financial struggles, he reached out about increasing child support. What he discovered left him stunned. Grant had divorced Tessa because of her compulsive spending and financial dishonesty that nearly bankrupted them. He had originally sought full custody, believing Tessa's financial irresponsibility made her an unfit parent. But Tessa fought to keep Riley, forcing Grant to relinquish custody claims to finalize the divorce. Documentation showed Grant had faithfully paid substantial child support, including specific allocations for Riley's education and athletics. Learning his daughter missed the championships when he had provided those funds sent him into a justified rage. Walter had given Vivian money specifically for Riley's school supplies and athletic gear. Instead, Vivian had used these funds for shopping excursions with Tessa. Tessa had diverted Grant's child support to maintain her social media facade. When Walter asked Riley how she managed without proper supplies, her answer was heartbreaking. "Mom says I should just borrow from Zoe since you guys have so much money." Everything clicked into place. I had noticed Zoe's supplies disappearing, which she explained as sharing with Riley. Now I realized she had been giving her cousin supplies after repeated requests. Learning about this exploitation and how they prevented Riley from activities her father had funded made it clear this environment was harmful. Walter contacted Grant and fully endorsed revisiting the custody arrangement. When one parent resists, custody disputes head to court. Tessa fought hard, motivated by fear of losing Grant's child support payments. The judge reviewed evidence of her financial mismanagement and poor choices. She hadn't worked steadily or used the child support and Walter's contributions for Riley's needs. The court quickly granted full custody to Grant, who had moved near his parents to provide family support. Riley now has stability and proper resources, free from manipulation. After losing custody, Tessa and Vivian showed up at our door unannounced. "You've ruined everything," Vivian hissed. "You'll need to replace my allowance. That child support was good income. Ever since you trapped my son, you've brought nothing but disaster." They pushed into our home, searching through our belongings as if entitled to payment. I called Walter while Ethan blocked them from Zoe's room. Walter arrived quickly, apologized for their behavior, and escorted them out. Later, desperate for money, they were caught shoplifting from a department store. Too proud to ask for help and unable to reach Walter during his lecture, they embarrassed him professionally. This became the final straw, and Walter filed for divorce. He left their house to Vivian but moved into our guest room, having always bonded with Zoe. Vivian took everything valuable from the settlement but wasted it all quickly. Though they had shelter, their utilities were disconnected one by one. When completely broke, Vivian returned, tearfully begging for help. "Let's be a real family now," she pleaded. "We can all live together harmoniously." Her suggestion was absurd after years of undermining our family. I refused to enable their dependency and denied them entry. They caused a scene until a neighbor called the police and they finally left. We haven't heard from them since, though rumors suggest they've accumulated substantial debts. Their house became known for collection notices and late-night disturbances. Recently, the property has been quiet, with no sign of either woman. I have no interest in their current circumstances. Riley has adapted well to life with Grant despite changing schools mid-year. She and Zoe stay connected through video calls and letters filled with drawings and track statistics. Ethan and Grant have become friends, sharing parenting strategies for raising preteen girls. They're planning a family camping trip for both girls to enjoy together. Walter divides his time between teaching and attending Zoe's track meets as the unofficial team historian. Watching these positive changes, I feel lighter. I hope for a future where both girls can flourish without the toxic dynamics that once threatened their childhood. Our family isn't defined by blood but by genuine care and respect, the foundation that truly matters.